What's up, your boy, for another reaction? In today's video, we have how WWE fumbled the first brand split, 2002.
The ratings are going to go down. But it was kind of like, this is necessary for survival.
On March 18th,
2002, nah, them ratings wasn't gonna go down, my nigga. This was when wrestling was competing with Sunday Night Football, my nigga.
2002,
The ratings down, nah, super down.
Linda McMahon announced that the company would split its roster between two shows, Raw and SmackDown.
I don't get this, my nigga. Like, I don't get the draft, the split. Like, I don't get this shit.
On paper, it was a bold, promising plan to refresh the product. In practice, however, the 2002 brand split got off to a famously rough start, before WWE finally found its footing and saved the concept. So let's go back in time to like 2002 and see how WWE managed to mess this up, and how they eventually saved it.
Tonight, we will witness the first ever World Wrestling Federation draft.
Now, the actual first draft took place on March 25th, 2002, with Ric Flair and Vince McMahon dividing the roster.
There you see the podium that will be utilized tonight for our draft.
The concept was exciting, but it quickly became apparent that many decisions were not thought through. Some of the draft decisions were made purely for shock value. For example, splitting up the APA or splitting up the Dudley Boys.
Guess what, Rick? My next choice on SmackDown, I choose Diva.
This was done.
I can't believe it. It's real niggas that say Vince McMahon need to come back. We want Vince back. If you want Vince McMahon back, then you're a horrible person. You're a horrible human being, and you really don't deserve to be on this earth. The nigga a sicko. He's sick. He's weird, nasty. Like,
To highlight
you got a woman in your life, right? You got sisters, daughters, like.
just how unpredictable the draft could be. And it did work. I mean, this was shocking at the time. But did this actually pay off for Bubba and Devon in the long term? Well, the split resulted in Bubba getting a very underwhelming singles push on Raw, where he'd sometimes dance during matches. And the same went for Devon on SmackDown, with his Reverend Devon gimmick, which was also pretty underwhelming. And this isn't just my opinion. Both the talent involved and the creative team agree that it was a bad choice, with Bubba saying the following in a later interview.
Nobody wanted to see Bubba wrestle by himself. Nobody wanted to see Devon wrestle by himself.
Bruce Pritchard, a member of the creative team at the time, has also expressed regret over splitting up the Dudleys, with him explaining that it wasn't really thought through.
Obviously, it didn't work, and I was
Nothing is thought through now. Nothing is thought through now.
wrong.
What's funny is that because Billy and Chuck were drafted to SmackDown by Vince, the tag team titles became exclusive to the Blue brand. But because the WWE split up the majority of their tag teams during the draft, there weren't many established teams left for SmackDown. So honestly, keeping the Dudleys or even the APA together would have been a much better decision. There were some cool tag teams formed because of this. Hulk Hogan and Edge were pretty cool, but they were practically
Fuck Hulk Hogan.
two single stars just thrown together due to the lack of tag teams. The only established tag team they kept together was the Hardy Boys. For some strange reason though, Matt and Jeff were both drafted together onto the Red brand. But like, why? Why wouldn't you bring them over to SmackDown to feud with the tag champions Billy and Chuck? I mean, if you really think about it, why would you put any of the tag teams on Raw if there's no tag team championships? I know it isn't all about the titles, but
Yeah, y'all, Vince McMahon had some bad moments and made some mistakes too, y'all. Vince wasn't perfect, my nigga. He was way better than Triple H, though.
this creative decision made the Raw tag teams feel somewhat redundant. It's clear in hindsight that WWE management just winged it at the start, and this was especially clear with how the rest of the roster and the championships were split up amongst both shows. For example, to make up for the lack of tag team championships on Raw, somebody thought it would be a good idea to give the Red brand all 3 mid-card titles. So 3 mid-card championships, but no tag team division. What was even stranger though, was how the WWE handled its top prize. This is honestly a very debatable topic, so just hear me out for a second. Initially, the plan was for the undisputed WWE Championship to float between Raw and SmackDown. While this sounded fine on paper, it just didn't work out very well. For example, when Triple H was WWE Champion in April 2002, he feuded with Hulk Hogan. But because Hulk was exclusive to SmackDown, Triple H rarely showed up on Mondays. More importantly though, the shared World Championship concept undermined the whole separate brands concept. I mean, the entire purpose of the brand split was to create competition and emulate the Monday Night Wars. But how are Raw and SmackDown supposed to feel like separate shows when they're sharing the top championship? And don't get me wrong,
Like, get it. Facts, like the fuck.
are definitely ways to make one single world title work across two separate shows. It just wasn't working well in early 2002, and honestly, it held SmackDown and Raw back from truly reaching their potential as two separate shows. Once SmackDown got its own top championship, it truly let the brand flourish by giving stars like Eddie Guerrero, JBL, and many others a chance. If WWE stuck with the original plan of only one top championship, who knows if those stars would have ever gotten a chance to headline a WrestleMania. Now, I do want to be fair though, as I'm putting a lot of the blame on WWE right now, but there were also a ton of other things out of the WWE's control that contributed to the fumbling of this first brand split, especially over on Raw. For example, a lot of the top stars drafted to Raw ended up being out of action for a variety of reasons. Kane was originally set to be a big name on Raw, but was written off TV to heal up an injury. This was done by the NWO, who'd attack Kane backstage. Speaking of the NWO, the group was also meant to be another main attraction for the Raw brand, but that started falling apart when Scott Hall unfortunately got released. But things only got worse from there when Kevin Nash got injured in July 2002, which at that point pretty much just killed the faction. The worst of all though was the departure of Stone Cold Steve Austin. Heading into June 2002, Austin was not very happy with WWE's creative, and he was especially unhappy with how the brand split was going. So Austin was just like, screw this shit, I'm out.
Bottom line is everything sucks. I'm not happy with the direction Stone Cold Steve Austin's going. I ain't happy with the direction the whole company's
Yes, that boy Stone Cold, not an ass kisser. Facts.
going. I think the writing has been pretty substandard. I'll go one better than that. It's been piss poor.
At this point, Raw
Roman Reigns called niggas out for this shit right now, like a couple months ago, and how WWE ain't built no new stars, and that nigga Roman a part time now.
pretty much lost
That's
all
how Roman feeling. They saying Roman getting into it with the creative, like.
of its top names in the span of 2 to 3 months, and these losses mixed with the awful planning of the rosters meant that WWE needed to get their shit together and fast, leading to late July 2002 when Vince came out and made a bunch of announcements. One of them being that a free agent period had begun, meaning that any superstar could sign with another brand.
To all the superstars on Raw, if you're that concerned, if you think the grass is greener on the other side, over here on SmackDown, you are free to negotiate with the GM of SmackDown.
Now WWE could trade superstars between the two shows and start to fix the roster mistakes made back in April. Vince also replaced himself and Ric Flair with new general managers, Eric Bischoff on Raw and Stephanie McMahon on the Blue brand.
As time goes on, this brand separation is going to be really, really good for us. We have had some stutter starts with it to a certain extent, but now with Steph and Bish.
That boy Brock Lesnar love Vince boy. The SA Bros.
Off, juxtaposed, it looks like it's going to work.
Bischoff and Stephanie were immediately pitted against each other in competition for ratings. But more importantly, that free agent period also meant that they'd be competing over talent. Both GMs started showing up on the opposite show, trying to poach wrestlers. But here's the thing, this talent war storyline, it wasn't only entertaining, but it also served a crucial purpose. It allowed WWE to rebalance the rosters under the guise of competition. For example, one of Raw's biggest needs was a top-tier star to
Bro, this nigga Stone Cold, bro. Look at the aura, bro. This nigga just got aura, like, bro. The walk, like, yes, a meat goblin, like.
fill
I need that what T-shirt, like.
Austin's void.
Just
Eric
look at the
Bischoff
aura vibe.
aggressively courted Triple H to sign with Raw, thus stealing him from SmackDown. Triple H would officially join Raw by the end of July 2002, thus correcting the lack of star power. Stephanie McMahon retaliated in a big way. Stephanie showed up in a limo and revealed that Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman were leaving with her. Surely enough, Brock Lesnar debuted as a SmackDown roster member shortly after. Another good example of how this free agent period helped is Matt Hardy. Back in April, Matt was drafted to Raw with Jeff, but as we discussed earlier, this was a really weird decision since there were no tag titles on Raw. However, when the free agent period opened up, the writers used it to fix their mistake, moving Matt over to SmackDown while keeping Jeff on Raw. And the results were much better, with Matt introducing his V1 gimmick and becoming one of SmackDown's top.
Well, this was 2002. Jeff Hardy wasn't, this ain't 2008. This wasn't the Jeff Hardy we all know and love. That 2008 Jeff Hardy, 2009, bigger than Obama, but he was building himself up in the becoming that.
Heels. From here, the chess moves continued weekly through August. Talents were traded or unexpectedly showed up on new shows. For example,
This ain't fucking NFL talking some talents being traded. Like, what the hell, gang?
Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, and Big Show were moved over to SmackDown. In exchange, Raw acquired the likes of the Un-Americans, so Christian, Lance Storm, and Test, as well as Chris Jericho and eventually Stacy Keibler. Now on screen, these decisions were presented as a conflict between Stephanie McMahon and Eric Bischoff, but these new general managers were more or less just on-screen characters. What truly shook things up were the changes made behind the scenes. Originally, both Raw and SmackDown shared the same writing teams during the first 3 months of the brand split, but this changed when Stephanie and Eric were brought in, with Paul Heyman becoming the lead writer on SmackDown, while Brian Gertz would write Raw. And there's actually a very interesting backstory from both Brian and Paul on how they would trade talent.
SmackDown had Jericho and the Un-Americans. My eye was on Guerrero. I proposed a trade. The behind-the-scenes laughter at my proposal could be heard across the street. I knew this was the deal of the millennium for SmackDown.
We did not have anyone who could host a talk show segment and be that kind of character. Like, all right, you know what? Throw in Chris Jericho and then we'll talk. Obviously, it's not a question of a handshake deal and, hey, Vince, we made a trade. You got to sell it to him. And Vince, saw a lot of value in the Un-Americans and saw a lot of value in Jericho being on Raw as well. And I think both shows benefited from it.
At this point, Raw and SmackDown were genuinely starting to feel like two separate shows. And heading into the final quarter of 2002, both brands started to have their own identities. SmackDown became the wrestling show, known for its in-ring quality, cruiserweights like Rey Mysterio, and exciting new talent like John Cena, while Raw leaned into being the sports entertainment show, with bigger personalities like Chris Jericho or Shawn Michaels. Alongside that roster,
Shawn, man. I don't know if that man would get injured, bro. He wrestled more in the 2000s, bro.
shakeup, WWE also cleaned up the title scene. In July and August 2002, two long-standing belts were quietly retired. First, on the July 22nd edition of Raw, Eric Bischoff announced that the IC and European Championships would be unified that very night. And a month later, they did the same thing with the Hardcore Championship. Both of these unification matches happened with no real pay-per-view build or big storyline. They were literally announced the day of, which shows that WWE was rushing to clean up the mid-card division. And it worked. Now the focus was entirely on the IC Championship, and Raw's mid-card was much, much stronger. Heading into August 2002, the WWE Undisputed Championship was still being shared amongst both shows, but things were about to change. At SummerSlam 2002, Brock Lesnar won the title from The Rock, and the next week, Stephanie McMahon announced that Brock Lesnar was only to appear on SmackDown, meaning that the Undisputed WWE Championship was now a SmackDown-only title.
You know the deal. The champion wrestles on both shows.
No, Eric. It's the champion's prerogative which show he wrestles on, and I happen to pay Brock Lesnar a whole lot of money to be an exclusive to SmackDown.
This move left Raw without
Triple H a cuck.
a real world champion, so this prompted Eric Bischoff to create a new one. He brought back the retired WCW Big Gold Belt, one of the best world championship designs, just saying, and introduced it as the new
that big gold, that bit fire. I need that bit in the house. Look at it.
World Heavyweight Championship, awarding it to Triple H on September 2nd, 2002.
Ladies and gentlemen, your new world champion, Triple H!
The last step was addressing the tag team situation. Rather than keep one set of tag titles floating, WWE decided to create two. So, the World Tag Team Championships were moved over to Raw. Meanwhile, Stephanie McMahon introduced new tag team titles for SmackDown. With these changes, by the end of 2002, the brand split's championship structure made much more sense, and things would become even more balanced by mid-2003, when SmackDown introduced the United States Championship as an Intercontinental Championship equivalent.
Rest in peace.
At this point, each brand now had 4 titles: a world title, a tag title, a secondary singles title, and one division that was exclusive to each brand, with SmackDown exclusively having the Cruiserweights and Raw exclusively having Divas. And honestly, these fixes all coming together, shaking up the roster, the new general managers, and the revision of the title scene fixed a lot of the messiness that came with that initial draft. So you gotta give WWE credit for finding a way to fix all of this in the span of a couple of months. Because at the time, there were rumors of them abandoning the brand split entirely, and I'm very thankful that they didn't, because this brings me to the final point I want to talk about today, and that's just how important this brand split was for WWE. Both Raw and SmackDown developed their own identities that would carry the company through the next several years. By early 2003, it was undeniable that the brand split succeeded in rejuvenating WWE. It created an environment where talent who might have been overshadowed before could finally break through.
When you have one roster you can't really push other people except your main guys.
JBL is like a prime example, as he was somebody that became a big star out of necessity because SmackDown needed another top guy. If there was no brand split, this probably would have never happened. Triple H would have just continued dominating as the main champion. I could honestly go on for days about this next part, but I do think I'm gonna wrap up the video here. I think you guys get the point. The brand split was a major W for WWE, a huge win, but more importantly, I hope that this video documented just how messy that first brand split was. WWE did not have a plan, but in the end, they figured it out, so you gotta give them their props for that. But yeah, you're watching Wrestling Historian. I use no AI in my content, so if you enjoy this, please subscribe. I'm so thankful.
Ain't nothing wrong with the AI voices, my nigga. Like, ain't nothing wrong with that. Like, a nigga don't want to talk, a nigga don't want to talk. As long as it's a good video, nigga got a lot of proof and, you know what I'm saying, shit. This is a good video, though. You know what I'm saying? I don't have no problem with the AI voices. It's a little annoying, but I have no problem with it. But make sure comment, subscribe, and do this. It's good. Let's look at the boy channel. Hey, you got some good videos. Was 2004 Triple H, and you just started. I'm gonna subscribe. We react to everything, you know. We gonna react to more WWE shit.